Gaslighting, as you all know, is denying someone's reality, then telling that person that there's something wrong with them, and to keep doing this repeatedly until the gaslighted person is so broken down that they just go along with the gaslighter without even having to be asked. So exactly what is gaslighting? Let's start with where the term comes from. It originates from a play that later became a film in the 1930s called Gaslight. In the film, the husband keeps turning the old-fashioned gas lights up and down. And when she asks him who is turning the lights up and down, he denies it's happening. He tells her he doesn't think that they're any less bright than they were before. She slowly starts to doubt her own reality. Then she loses her grip on reality, and then she goes insane.
So that's where that term gaslighting comes from. And we retain the same meaning. It basically means to manipulate someone else's reality with techniques like denial, misdirection, contradiction, and lying.
Gaslighting is a process of psychological abuse and manipulation, which entails denying the reality or another person's experience, beliefs, or perceptions, and then subsequently undercutting their mental capabilities or the mental health of the gaslighted person. So in regular speak, it would be things like, I never said that. You must have memory problems or just be paranoid if you think I did. And they did. You have the recording, but they still say it. Gaslighting is not a one-off. It's a systematic process. It's a grooming process. Once a person establishes trust with you or expertise, then they'll also create this willingness in you to question yourself. You'll start saying things like, maybe you're right, maybe you didn't say that. And they keep going and keep doing it until you're completely under their control. So let's go through a list of what gaslighting is. First, it is manipulation. Doubt yourself. Only believe me. When they do that, the gaslighter gets what they want. Number two, it's emotional abuse, because they're playing with a person's mind and with a person's reality. Number three, it's meant to leave you feeling impaired and mentally unwell. Maybe I need therapy. Maybe I am developing memory problems. I need to stop being so sensitive. Number four, it's a tool with which to control you. The more you mistrust yourself and believe that they're right, then you start giving in and going along and capitulating to them. Number five, it's the minimizing and pathologizing of your emotion. Ugh, you're too sensitive. You need some help.
All of these things are designed to make you doubt yourself. Gaslighting in that way is a tool of psychological control. The more you can question someone's reality, the more control you have over them.
Gaslighting. Well, it's a psychological technique. It's a tool. It's a strategy that people use to make the other person, meaning you, question your own reality. I mean, what's worse than not knowing what's real? But once they can get you to question your reality and your reality of your experience with them or life or some event or yourself, they can gain power over you. And that's the whole strategy, for somebody to get power over somebody or control over them, to manipulate them, to degrade you, or have some kind of powerful dominant stance over you, and many times using you, exploiting you. And they use this technique basically to get control. Now, when we think about the other side of this, and we're going to get into some tools on this in a moment, but your biggest tool, your biggest asset is your ability to determine what's real and what's not real. I mean, we can't go through the day without having a firm grasp on reality.
Gaslighting is emotional abuse. Okay, let me say that again. Gaslighting is emotional abuse. The word abuse is a strong word, and it fits here. Because when you manipulate someone's reality, you are in essence stealing from them.
And then there's what I call the gaslighting test. One surefire way that you know you're being gaslighted. You want to know how that works? When you start pulling out text messages, emails, and voice recordings during arguments on a regular basis to make your point, you know you're being gaslighted. You start recording everything because you don't trust yourself anymore, because your reality has been confused many times. Once you start doing that, you know you're being gaslighted.
If you've ever felt the need to record a conversation because you want to play it back for that person, or even play it back for yourself, so you can be sure you heard it right, you're being gaslighted. I can guarantee it, because that's the only reason you would feel the need to record a conversation. And here's what's interesting. Gaslighting isn't just an individual phenomenon. I've observed something that I call gaslighting by tribe.
Imagine that the gaslighting is not person to person, but it's many people who are all supporting that twist in reality. I'm going to give you a really dark example of this, Kyle. So let's use it. This is what we tend to see, what happens with tribal gaslighting. Tribal gaslighting can also be family gaslighting. It can be entire workplace gaslighting, any of those things. So a really sort of painful example of this would be if there was abuse that occurred in a family, okay? And a person like, I know this happened, this abuse happened. And the family throughout the years says, no, that never happened. That never happened to you. So that would be everyone together. Now you can see then how this sort of gaslighting by group or by tribe can be so much more powerful, because when it's person to person, over time you can still say, nah, it's one, we don't see eye to eye, he's just messing with me. But when it's many people, you're like, well, it can't be that everyone's in on this.
Anyone who's ever experienced gaslighting knows how confusing it can be. Because it's designed to make you doubt your own reality, and any break from reality is actually defined as psychosis, we can rather quickly find ourselves feeling like we're losing our mind.
Gaslighting is a war to tear down your capacity to know your own reality. When people listen to you and help you get in touch with more of who you are, you can see more of reality, not less. So, the results that happen? Well, you shrink, less of you is available. Your world shrinks. You don't really know where you can go and where you can't. Your view of life shrinks. It's gross out there if that's the way it feels to be in a relationship or be in the world. And then almost worst of all, your freedom shrinks because now you're controlled by somebody else. So big deal. Just read a list of symptoms here that I put together for you. You get confused and second guess yourself when you're with this person. You no longer feel like yourself. You question yourself, feel like everything you do is wrong, can't quite know what it is, but there's something not right here. It doesn't feel right. You start to feel more isolated, difficulty making decisions. You question yourself, like, am I being too sensitive? Am I getting more and more withdrawn or even unsociable and emotionally or physically isolated? Constantly apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, because you feel like, oh, who am I to say that? Or maybe that was wrong. And then sometimes people even can begin, I've heard this from so many people in pain, they get in a pattern of defending the one that's hurting them because they've kind of been taught to do that.
Perception is what you believe to be true about the world around you. Perspective is what other people believe to be true about the world around them. So as I sit here looking at you, this is my perception. My perception is that I'm sitting in the center seat and you're sitting outside of me and everything else is built around me at the center. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what your perception is? The same thing. I am across the table from you, you're at the center, and everything in this room is built around you. Mm-hmm. So our perceptions are never going to be the same. So the only way that I can find common ground with you is to stop thinking about what's happening around me from my perception and start thinking from your perspective. Because then I get my perception plus your perception combined. I get twice as much information to think through this specific situation. You see, most people live their life in a world of perception, meaning what they see of the world around them, the way they see colors, the way they interpret information, the way they engage other people in relationships. We live in a perception-based society. It's all about us and how we interpret the world around us. We are the star in our own show every day. That's why sitcoms are so popular. That's why we love movies, because we get a chance to observe someone else's life without actually having to live it. So we're very comfortable in our area of perception. Perspective, on the other hand, is the ability to perceive you or yourself from an outside position, in a different point of view. Now, obviously, perspective takes a lot more work than perception. Perception is natural. Perception is our default. But perspective is something that we have to try to achieve. When you hear people talk about perspective, oftentimes they're using the word incorrectly, and they're actually talking about perception. Let me give you an example. You'll hear people say, well, from my perspective, X, Y, Z. Or that's your perspective, but from my perspective, I believe some other thing. You see, people don't understand the difference between perception and perspective, and they use perspective to describe perception. This is why I think it is so important. Because perception is limited. It's limited by your 5 senses, and it's tied to your own core biases and your core assumptions. That means that perception is predictable. If somebody knows you well enough, if somebody has shared some piece of their background with your background, they can actually predict how you're going to act, how you're going to feel, or what you're going to say. Perception is limiting. Perspective gives you an advantage because it is unpredictable. Perspective brings new information. It brings new ideas. It brings leverage over those people who do not have perspective.